We are coming back again today, and of course we want to talk about topics that matter the most to both buyers and sellers, and today we want to talk about lenders.
Let's have a lender conversation, and so we hope this will be helpful to you. And when you think about lenders, you may say, why is it that big of a deal? I mean, you have a ton of lenders to choose from, you have a ton of realtors to choose from, but you know what? This is the largest purchase that potentially you, or most people I should say, will make, and the people that you pick on your team do matter, and we're going to talk about a little bit why that matters. And also you may have experienced a realtor that is going to recommend a lender or discourage you from using a lender. So I just want to talk about why there is that in the marketplace sometimes. You know, people think that maybe there's a kickback or there's a relationship or there's something there that the realtor wants to drive you to their best friend or their golf buddy. But I got to tell you, when it comes down to business, that really has nothing to do with it. So let's talk about lending and why we would recommend different lenders over others. So the first thing, there are different types of lenders that you want to think about. There are lenders that are banks, there are mortgage brokers, there are
credit unions,
and they all have different
right.
They all have different lending guidelines for that specific institution, and you know, a specific credit union might have looser guidelines on one aspect of the loan, but their investors may not allow loans of certain sizes, or you know, they may offer different incentives. Different banks or different mortgage brokers may offer you know, just different programs, first-time buyer programs, or different things like that. Now, again, this doesn't include, you know, VA loans. Some people have a misunderstanding that in order to use a VA loan that you have to use, you know, a lender that's got veteran in their name, or, you know, Navy something in their name, and that's not true. Those loans are going to be available through a huge majority of legitimate banks and mortgage brokers and credit unions. So VA loans, for example, FHA loans, USDA loans, all of those special programs, all those are guaranteed by or insured by, backed up by the federal government. Those are going to be available to almost any lender. But in addition to those big ones, different lenders have different programs. Okay, along the same lines, another point to think about when you're looking at lenders is different lenders have different types of fees. And so it is, of course, totally appropriate for a lender to charge a fee to a buyer who wants to use their money for the loan. And so the interesting thing about it is that you really want to look closely at what the lender fees are. So there are some large lenders, nationwide lenders, who they do a lot of advertising. And if you call them, or if you go to their website, it might look like they have better interest rates. But just dig a little bit deeper, because you want to actually get a loan estimate from those guys, and be able to compare where all of their loan costs come from. And so you can take that loan estimate and then get a loan estimate from a different lender, maybe a different type of lender, and you might be surprised that sometimes when you get a break on the interest rate, a small margin on the interest rate in your favor, that it actually might cost you more money. So you just want to look a little bit deeper in most cases, just to make sure that there's no hidden fees. So kind of along the same lines is understanding not just that there are banks, mortgage brokers, credit unions, but also realize that there are a group of lenders that are nationwide lenders. They can do a loan in multiple states, and you see them advertised. You see them advertised at sporting events, on social media, commercials on the TV, commercials on radio, etc. And so just understand that their game plan, the good news is that they do a whole lot of loans They know what they're doing, and they can offer some incentives because they're such a large company. But the opposite end of that spectrum of the large nationwide lenders is the local lender. Now, the local lender who works for a small mortgage broker might not do any advertising whatsoever because they have a different business model. So the nationwide lender, their business model is to advertise and capture as many people as possible. So it's a really high volume. And as you can expect with some of these guys, which I'm not going to name any, but with some of these guys, they do a lot of volume, but the quality is not always there. Why could that be? Well, because you might have a loan originator, a loan officer in one state. That loan officer's processor may work in a completely different state, in a different part of the country. The underwriter may work in a different state. The closing department may be in a completely different area. And so these guys, they can't just walk down the hall and say, hey, do you have the file on so-and-so's house? We need something fixed on that. And so anytime that something may come up in that file, that can cause a big delay because on the East Coast time versus the West Coast time versus lunch break here, it can just be a challenge. The local lenders, especially the ones that I like to work with, are ones that are housed in many cases in the very same area with their processors. And so they literally can walk down the hall, knock on the door, enter an office and say, hey, on the so-and-so file, we need this. And they literally get together on it. So it's more about being able to process, problem solve very quickly when they're all housed in the same building. Another big aspect to, as I said, national lenders, sometimes they build their business with advertisements, or that's their business model to pull as many potential buyers into their system as possible. Along the same lines, those guys realize that most people statistically will go with the first lender that they talk to, the first lender where they apply to. They won't look any deeper. And these guys know that. And so that, again, that's just part of their business model. Doesn't mean that they don't do it right. It just means that they realize most people are not going to go back and check for different incentives from different lenders, loan costs, etc. Local lenders, on the other hand, primarily build their business from reputation. That's why you don't see a lot of local lenders advertising on nationwide television or radio or wherever else that you advertise nowadays. What you will see sometimes though is a local lender who advertises on their son's little league team or their daughter's volleyball team, right? So they'll do that, but their primary business model is about doing such a good job that you, the buyer, want to advertise, talk about, give reviews to these local lenders. And so I think it does make a big difference. So one takeaway from this conversation is I understand a lot of buyers, they start thinking about buying a home and they see an advertisement from one of these large companies. They go on their website, they put in that simple application, and they get their pre-qualification, and they don't want to do that part anymore. Now they want to go start looking at homes. That's normal, right?
That's normal.
Like, that's easy to understand. I can just highly recommend from my experience that you shop around. Interestingly, people say, well, I don't want my credit to be hit 2 or 3 or 4 times when I'm just comparing different mortgage companies. And what's cool is that the government is set up has set up rules and regulations where you actually can talk to multiple different lenders who are going to look at your credit, and it will only hit your credit the first time, but the following second, third, and fourth opinions from different companies are not going to hurt your credit, right? And so that gives you a lot of freedom. The opportunity to go look around, and it's not going to hurt you. Now, that's not the same thing. If you apply for a mortgage on Monday and a car loan on Tuesday and, furniture on Wednesday, those are going to hit your credit. But if you talk to mortgage, bank A on Monday and then mortgage bank B on Tuesday and mortgage bank C on Wednesday, those subsequent conversations and applications are not going to hurt your credit. So I think that's important to know.
Well, and just like you talked about earlier, like, there's different types of loan people, and so they offer different programs. And so it kind of is a disservice to yourself if you only go with the first one and only talk to one,
right.
because somebody else may have a program that actually works better for you.
That's right.
So shopping around, it's not going to hurt your credit, but it actually makes you a better shopper.
That's right.
A consumer,
a smarter
of homes.
consumer.
Right.
Absolutely. So let's ask this question. Does it really matter if you close on time?
Mm-hmm.
Why are you laughing at me?
I'm just thinking through the stories that we've gone through where people didn't close on time.
Oh my gosh. and sadly, so just think about this. So number one, absolutely exciting. You found a house.
Yes.
You can visualize yourself there. I mean, most lenders can get from contract to closing 30 days should be super easy. Now, if the market's doing crazy things, there was a couple of years ago when people were buying like crazy and, appraisals would get backed up and those kind of things. But for the most part, any lender, any solid lender should be able to get your house closed from the contract to the closing table in 30 days. Mm-hmm. Easy. Yeah. Some great lenders that we work with can probably do this in 14 days. But let's just assume everybody's working off of a 30-day calendar. So you find the home, you submit your offer, you win the offer, especially you win it when there were other buyers that attempted it too. Mm-hmm. You got it. Now you start to, you go through the inspection, you get past the inspection, you start to visualize the rooms, the furniture, your kids are picking out their bedrooms, right? All the deal. And you say, well, is it a big deal if closing gets pushed back a week or two? Well, there's more to it. Think about this. Right. 2 weeks out, you got to notify your boss. You got to take a day off work, right? You got to take a day off work. And in our experience, when files have been delayed, we don't get a 1 to 2 week notice. We get a 1 to 2 day notice that it won't close on time. Sometimes we just get a notice that 2 hours from now you're not going to be able to close. We think about the family that we helped move from Tennessee to Birmingham.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, this sweet little old couple, like they have their moving truck literally loaded up with everything that they own. They've sold their home in Tennessee. They're moving to Birmingham and they are coming to the closing table, getting ready to sign everything. And what they didn't know was Tennessee, Alabama, there's a time change difference. Also, their lender there just happened to close early on that particular day, and so they didn't know it. So money couldn't be wired. So this little old couple, like, after they've done everything to move, their moving truck is literally sitting in front of the house. They can't move in. And so now they're scrambling. Not only, like, you've got the moving truck, you've got to come back and sign it on a different day.
Right.
And like now there's a hotel, there's figuring out how to get the help that was going to help you unload. Now they're not there. So they're just, it's like a domino effect of all the things that can happen when closing gets shoved back.
Right. We had one get shoved back. Literally it got shoved back 2 weeks, which we'll tell that story in a minute. But one of the things that happened was the utilities got cut off. Mm-hmm. Even though we had prepared properly, the people on the other side of the table didn't think about it because, again, as sellers, we had the buyers in this case.
Right.
As sellers, they felt so hung out there, not knowing what for sure was going to happen, and they just forgot to do the utilities. So the utilities got cut off. It can be a real pain. So I mean, you've taken off work, you've got movers or friends. You might say, well, that's a sad story. They were moving from Tennessee to Alabama, but if I'm just moving to the other side of my town, really kind of the same things apply.
Right. I mean, you end up, like we had a couple the other day that their closing got pushed back just a couple of, we found out a couple of hours ahead of time that their closing was not going to make it. And she was just a very meticulous person, and she had like AT&T was supposed to be there at 9 a.m. and then the movers at 12 and then the cable guy at 3, like everything was backed up, and they were just moving across town. But all of those same things mattered, and so of course she had a day off, and then she had to take a different day off, and then the movers had to be rescheduled. It becomes a big headache when you have to move everything around.
And this goes back to why, again, the question that we opened the conversation with: why do realtors highly recommend some lenders and probably discourage other lenders? Number one, if you're a buyer working with me and you are dead set on using a lender that you want to use, I will work my hardest to make that happen. Absolutely. But just know that if you think back, and I know you used this illustration a few minutes ago, if you think back to when you were in grade school and you were picking teams, right, for the whatever after school basketball pickup game, you just want to pick the best players first, and that's what your agent is trying to do.
Right.
So how do we make this transaction, this sale, this purchase, or the sale of your home as smooth as possible? How do we do that? Well, we pick a great team, just what I was just talking about. There is truly a 3-person team between you, the buyer, the real estate agent, and the lender. Mm-hmm. It's a 3-person team, and there's communication from day one all the way through, not even to the closing table, but beyond when there are good people in play. Right. So we talked about picking the right team, but how do we as real estate professionals and lenders make this the best, easiest, smoothest, funnest transaction? You know, it starts with a true pre-qualification. Right. As a buyer, sometimes buyers call these nationwide companies, and some of these companies have a reputation for offering a pre-qualification letter even though they've not verified anything. Right. And so that doesn't help you. If you're the buyer, you might say, well, that's all right, I'll take it and run with it. Except that when you do find the right house, how disappointing is it 3 weeks down the road, after you've already paid your earnest money and your inspection and your appraisal, that your lender then comes back and says, oh, I'm sorry, you really could never buy this house. Right. Like, you want to know truly if you're pre-qualified for that home, for that purchase price up front. Mm-hmm. And the next thing, the second thing that makes this super simple when we're working with a fantastic lender is they start working on the deal right up front. As soon as we get the contract signed between you, our buyer, ourselves as the realtor, the seller's agent, and the seller, as soon as that contract is signed, what we do is we make sure that lender has a copy of it almost immediately. Why does that matter? Because the good lender is going to go to work on it right now and get it done. A poor lender, and this has happened on more than one occasion, is a poor lender will let that file sit because they've got 30 days. Remember, most files can get everything done in about 2 weeks. So some lenders, they take your file and they just put it on the desk and it sits there. And they don't worry about the phone calls, the emails, and the messages because they know they can get it done in 2 weeks. And then they pick it up 2 weeks later and realize, uh-oh, something's missing, something's wrong. Right. And again, that's what causes some of the frustration and truly some of the heartache and some of the tears. And again, we're not exaggerating, right? Real tears. Yeah. So again, first of all, making sure that you truly have a good pre-qualification before you find your home. Second of all, making sure that the lender picks up the ball immediately as soon as that contract is signed. And the third thing is just communicating throughout. The lender is going to communicate certainly with us, but as that 3-person team should, and with you as the buyer. Sometimes the lender is going to say, hey, I need one more pay stub. Right. Hey, I need one more. I need you to sign this authorization for your tax transcripts. And so for that communication to happen quickly and for the buyer to jump on it can be a big deal.
So you guys, we wanted to wrap up just kind of recapping what we just said. Our goal when we talk about lenders, it is not to get any kind of special favor or any kind of kickback or anything like that. Our goal primarily is just to help you guys have the most smooth transition or transaction as possible. And as your local lender, like, we just have familiarity with different people and we kind of know what they can do and what they can't do. And also just to remember, shop around. Like most local agents are going to have multiple lenders because they know that they can offer different programs. And so if you'll ask your agent, they'll be able to give you a list of lenders and call them all. It's not going to take a hit on your credit. Just have a conversation with them so that you are an educated buyer. And then lastly, our goal is just to, save you the headaches that we've seen with these folks where, it is sometimes devastating when they've had so many things lined up and it's emotional and just not being able to get past the finish line. But our goal is to help you guys avoid those mistakes so that you don't end up in that situation.
So always feel free to reach out to us. We are Mike and Brandy Brown with Keller Williams Realty here in Birmingham, Alabama. My number is 205-368-5995, and you can always email info@MBBrownRealty.com.